Welcome to CareerBuzz, Canada's unique radio conversation that empowers lives, enriches careers, and energizes organizations. I'm your host, Shellie Deloyer, empowerment coach and professional trainer at Bright Futures, and I am pleased to be joining you today on CareerBuzz. Thanks for tuning in. Today on your show, I'm joined by Sara Bibb. Sara is the principal consultant of MKS HR Consulting. She's a professional and certified human resources professional, and she discovered that smaller companies have the same HR issues as larger ones, but without the professional HR resources to handle them. So what else to do? She started MKS HR Consulting and became the HR department for small business. Sara is helping small businesses to navigate human resource challenges to continue growing through our current times of change and uncertainty. I'm thrilled to have you joining me today, Sara. Welcome to CareerBuzz.
Thank you, Shellie.
So I'd like to start by introducing our listeners to who you are and the services that you provide through MKS Consulting. So can you take a little bit of time to fill us in on what you offer?
Sure. So I am an independent human resources consultant. So what that means is I work with small and medium-sized business owners. Typically, they're the size, around 10 employees, 15, 20, all the way up to probably a maximum of about 80 employees. Once you get above that, then you're big enough to warrant having your own in-house HR department. But before you get to that size, you're just not large enough to warrant having a full-time person. So where I step in is I act as that HR department. So I work with my clients and essentially help them manage the people side of their business. So that can mean helping them hire employees directly to their company, taking almost the entire process off their plate. So I'm in the background providing those services and hiring the top talent that they need, creating policies, reviewing policies that they have, managing employment issues that can come up with employees. So helping them successfully navigate situations. And that's very much case by case. Mm-hmm. But acting as that HR department. So once they start to be big enough and start to realize that the management of their people is also key to their operation success, then I can help them start to implement that HR foundation.
Right. Okay. And so because of the current COVID situation that we're in, how is that affecting what small businesses are needing?
They're coming across a lot of issues that they've probably never had to come across before because they've never had to run a business or manage employees in the middle of a pandemic. Mm-hmm. So a lot of those are new issues. And some of them are issues that you may have seen in the past, but COVID adds a bit of a spin to it. So one example is there are employees now where, because of the symptoms being so similar to a cold, they're calling in sick. So how does an employer kind of manage those situations? And how do you make sure that those situations don't kind of get out of hand? And the best way that I advise my clients is make sure you have that open and honest communication. As long as there's that back and forth dialogue, then it's much easier to handle situations because everybody's on the same page. If you don't talk to your employees or if you don't talk to your boss, nobody's going to know what's going on. And then what I find happens is that assumptions are made. And once assumptions start getting made, then everything kind of gets blown up and becomes bigger than it really needs to be. And the situation arises where a situation could have been completely avoided as long as that communication happens. And another thing I think employers and employees are dealing with is, especially if you were working in a physical workplace before, a lot of companies have moved their employees to work remotely. So that's a whole new challenge for both employees and employers on how do we manage the work relationship from a virtual standpoint. From an employer standpoint, they're used to seeing their employees in the physical workspace and seeing them sitting at their desk doing their job. So from some of their perspective, how do they know if their employees are actually working at home? And then from an employee standpoint, some of them it's good because they don't have that long commute that they might have had before, but they're also balancing being at home with another partner or other kids that are doing online school, another partner who's working from home, and they're working in the same physical space. And they're also losing that social aspect that they used to have. They can't just get up and walk to a coworker's desk and chit chat in the kitchen or at the water cooler. So it's trying to think of ways to take a lot of what you had in the physical workspace and see how can you switch it and move it around so you can try to keep a little bit of that same interaction that you had before. And a lot of it's going to be creativity and flexibility on both sides. So that's why the communication piece is so key.
Absolutely. Communication is one of the topics that I love to talk about, and we'll open that up a bit more in a moment. But I think, when we look at both sides of the pictures, like you see, it's flexibility on both ends, and being able to remember that your employees are human beings who have lives going on, and children. And if kids are in school and then they get the sniffles, now they can't be in school and you've got to be home with your kids. And there's a lot going on. And because they're human beings, they have emotions, they have stress, they have mental well-being that needs to be factored in as well. So I think all of those things are so important. And there's also jobs that have to get done, and there's priorities that need to be met and measurables that need to be tracked. And so it's such a balancing act of making sure that people are being treated fairly and compassionately, and that also nobody's taking advantage of the situation.
Yeah, exactly. And I think on going back to the idea of that there's both sides to the employer-employee relationship, is that the employees don't want to be taken advantage of and the employers don't want to be taken advantage of.
Right.
And I think that's where that communication piece comes back into it. So if you have that really good relationship between the employee and their manager, they feel comfortable, they can approach their manager or their business owner, depending upon the size of the organization, that they can approach them and say, this is what's going on. This is the trouble that I'm having. What do you suggest that we do? And a lot of things that I've been hearing, which I'm thankful that I hear that, is a lot of employers are really understanding and now truly getting that their employees are human beings. I've heard a lot of, from just the contacts in my networks and the different webinars I've been on throughout this whole pandemic, is that the leaders, especially the senior leaders in that C-suite level, is that they're now understanding, wow, you know what? My people actually are doing really well working remotely. And they initially, some of them were a little bit nervous about that because it goes back to that whole, how do I know if they're actually working? But a lot of the leaders are seeing that it is working really well remotely. And some of the employees are even more productive than they were in the office. Mm-hmm. So some companies are now starting to think about, okay, maybe we'll move completely to a remote setup at 100% permanently, or maybe we'll do it for a little bit longer. Right. And it's nice to hear that those seniors leaders are getting it. And I think because one of, I guess, the silver linings that you can get in a pandemic is that we're all in this. Now, we're all in different situations. We all have different unique personal situations and work situations, but we're all trying to figure out how to navigate and live through a pandemic. So that's our one common thread. Right. So because we have that commonality between all of us, be it your employees at the frontline level, all the way up to your senior leaders and your owners, we all get that we're all in the middle of this pandemic. And so it's a matter of helping one another. So I think that's one of the good things that's come about, that is there's been that aha moment for a lot of people and a lot of leaders too, because a lot of them are now realizing that their employees are the reason why their business is so successful. So how do we make sure that they stay engaged in the workplace and what they do? So it's nice to see, especially from a human resources standpoint, because as an HR professional, that's my goal for my clients, is to make sure that my clients' employees are happy so their business can continually run successful, so they don't have high turnover rates, constant issues, and things like that.
Nice. Yeah, that's so important. I think It's such an interesting time because we've never gone through something like this in this way before. The entire world can relate for the first time to what's going on kind of everywhere. And yes, every country has, their own unique way that they're handling this, and it's showing up disproportionately in different places, but we can relate to what's going on for everyone around the world. And it's bringing out the humanness in so many people. Like, this isn't something that we can address with just a few clear-cut policies and rules and it's done. There are emotions tied up in it. People aren't sure how to navigate. Uncertainty is stressful, and nobody really knows how to do this well because we've never done it before.
Yeah, exactly. And I've a couple of webinars that I've done in the past is that I've told people that there is no playbook here. There's no best practices that we can look back on because we've never gone through something like this before. Right. So it's better, in my opinion, to make a decision and act on something versus not doing something at all. And even if you do act on it and that decision is the wrong decision, at least okay, we attempted that didn't work. So what else can we do? It's okay to make a mistake as long as you don't, make the same mistake over again. And we are kind of writing that playbook as we go along this. And I think where we are now is quite a bit farther than we were back in March. I mean, we know quite a bit more about the virus. So then that allows employers to figure out, okay, how do we adjust our policies? And the one thing I think everybody's starting to learn is that nothing is stagnant. It's very fluid and it's constantly changing. So having someone that knows what you need to know from an employment legislation standpoint is super key, because just from an employment legislation standpoint in Ontario, there's been quite a few changes even over the last 3 months or so. So kind of having that knowledge is key, because that's going to be key to managing those people.
Right.
So one example of that would be when the pandemic first hit in March and all of the businesses had to shut down. A lot of employers across Ontario and across the world really were laying off their employees because their businesses were shut down. And in Ontario, you have a 13-week layoff period. And after those 13 weeks, if you haven't been paying for your employees' benefits, like your health benefits or an RSP plan, as an example, then that layoff would end, and then you would have to terminate the employment relationship and then owe the employees whatever termination pay is owed to them under the Employment Standards Act and common law. So what the government realized was, once that 13-week was coming up on that hard set deadline, they realized that there was a lot of employers that if that was their position after 13 weeks, they had to end the relationship. They weren't going to be able to afford to pay any of those payouts. So what they did was they made a temporary amendment to the legislation, and they created that, it's called IDEL, it's the Infectious Disease Emergency Leave. So anyone was on that temporary leave got switched over to that IDEL. And so as a business owner, keeping on top of that sort of stuff is super key. So that's one of the things that I make sure I do with my clients, and more of what I've been working on since the pandemic hit versus the recruitment side of things is making sure that my clients and those that follow me know, okay, this is what's going on with the employment legislation. This is what you now need to know.
Yeah, brilliant. Because especially in this climate, things are changing so quickly. And what's working one day might not be working the next.
Exactly.
Yeah. Happening in one province is different to the next, and different types of businesses fall into different categories. There's so much potential confusion that could end up being costly if it's not implemented properly.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So important. And, when we think of companies that have HR people in-house, then okay, that's great. That's their job to navigate all of this. But small businesses don't have those people. So it's so great to know that they can have someone who's dedicated to knowing this information and communicating it and helping you through it when they don't have their own HR staff.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Because I find the smaller companies, they'll run across all the exact same issues as larger companies. They just don't have that ability to have their own in-house person and call someone up in the HR department. So then part of my role when I service my clients is I am that HR department for them. They can call me up when they have an issue. So I'm kind of in their back pocket, so to speak.
Yeah. Awesome. I love it. So, what are some of the biggest HR issues that you are seeing currently that small businesses are facing? What do you think are the sort of the root of their challenges?
I think we talked about the legislation side and making sure that you're completely in the know from a legislative standpoint of what you need to know right now. And then based on that, you're going to have to adjust some of your policies. So for example, I'm working with one client and we're creating kind of a COVID plan and some COVID specific policies for her. Now those policies are going to change as things change, as we go through the different phases, because obviously once this pandemic does come to an end, then you're going to have to adjust accordingly. But so if you're thinking about sick leaves or when your employees call in sick, you're going to have to think of, okay, how does COVID impact that? How do I need to do things differently? So because the symptoms are so similar to the cold or the flu, you're then going to have to be a little bit more flexible when employees are calling in sick. And then even right now in Ontario, they have mandated all workplaces to have a pre-screened questionnaire. So some callers that are listening in might, depending upon where their child goes to school or if they've already seen it in their workplace, there's that questionnaire that you have to answer. So do you have a fever greater than 37.6? Have you traveled outside of Canada? Do you have a new runny nose? And all of those questions. So all workplaces in Ontario now have to make sure that they're screening every single employee before they come into their shift in their workplace. And then that also includes employees or contractors or visitors, like your, delivery people are coming into your physical workplace. So that's a new thing that you would have to keep up to date with. As it relates to the hiring side, there are some businesses where they've had the opposite effect, is that their businesses are even busier than they were before the pandemic hit, which is fantastic to be busy in the middle of what we're going through. So some of them might be hiring right now. And even when you look at your hiring processes, those are going to be quite a bit different. Obviously, one thing that stands out is a lot of those in-person interviews that you might hold as part of your process before, they may have to be moved to strictly virtual, where you're doing it over Zoom or some sort of a video platform.
Right.
I've had one client where she did a Zoom call and then she did bring in the last candidate on a one-on-one interview just so she could meet her face-to-face.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to have to look at what are the roles that you need to hire for, what makes sense for that role and for your business. But one of the things I think both the employers and the employees have to remember is the labor market right now is quite a bit different. And I've struggled to find a word to describe it because I've never seen a labor market that's like this before. From an employer standpoint, there's definitely a larger pool of candidates to draw from than pre-pandemic. Definitely before the pandemic hit, it was a very candidate-driven market. So there wasn't a lot of people actively looking for jobs as there are now. So employers really, really had to market and sell to those candidates why they want to come work for them, what's in it for them. I do think that that's going to continue, once all of the proverbial dust settles. I think recruitment is always a two-sided process where the employer is evaluating whether or not that person is a good fit for the role in their company. But that potential employee is also evaluating, do I want to work there? Do I see myself in that job and in that company? So I think employers are always going to have to make sure that they're strong on the marketing of their business and what's in it for the employees. Mm-hmm. But one of the things now from an employer standpoint, because there is a much bigger pool to draw from, you definitely have more applicants to go through. So that is going to increase the time that it's going to take to screen the resumes, because you just have that much more to go through. But to make it efficient and worth your while as an employer, definitely know exactly what you want in a position. What are those must-have skills that that person needs to have to do the role, and have a really clear and concise understanding of the role and the fit for your company, because that'll make going through those big piles of resumes that much more better. From an employee standpoint, it's definitely quite a bit different than what some of job seekers have been used to, is that the competition, if you will, is quite a bit higher because that applicant pool is much more bigger. So you want to figure out a way to make sure that your resume stands out amongst anybody else. And so a lot of that is take a look at the job posting. What are those skills that are directly related to past jobs or current jobs, and really highlight that at the top of your resume. So as employers and recruiters are reviewing your resume, they know, oh, okay, yes, they've done that job before. They have exactly what I'm looking for. And if you don't have those direct work experience that you can put on your resume, what are those transferable skills?
Mm-hmm.
And if you can really highlight and make that connection between the skill that you're bringing from another job and how it connects to the job you're applying for, that will be key in making sure your resume stands out. And I actually, I had a conversation with a candidate just yesterday, actually. Because my one client was hiring an executive assistant position, like I had said, there was a massive number of applications that came in, and there was a lot of strong candidates too. So not only did we have a lot of people apply, but there was a lot of really good quality candidates, which from an employer standpoint is an excellent problem to have. But from an employee or job seeker standpoint, like I said, it makes that standing out a little bit harder. And I had one candidate who wasn't selected for the final position kind of ask me for feedback. How did my interview go? I felt that I had the experience you were looking for. And I did say that her interview went well. There was nothing that she said wrong or did wrong in the interview. So for her, she had a hard time kind of understanding, well, if my interview went well and I had the experience that I think you're looking for, why did you not choose me and choose someone else? Mm-hmm. And when you're in those situations, I think like we're in now, it can be disheartening and frustrating from a job seeker perspective, because again, it's like, I interviewed really well. I have the experience. Like, what else do I need to do type of thing? And those situations will come up, and it is part of the job search process. But if you know that you're interviewing really well and you have good, strong skills, it will happen for you. It's just because of the way everything is and everything is still a little uncertain, I think the job search process will take a little bit longer than normal. And I know it's not the most nicest thing to hear, but I think if you have that goal in mind and if you keep saying to yourself and believing in yourself, it will happen. And I did say that to this candidate and said that she's got really great skills. She interviews well. I know it's not a matter of if she finds a job, it's a matter of when. And yes, there are going to be those times where you might get a little bit frustrated and disheartened, but just keep believing in yourself and believing that it will come. And I know it's easy for me to say from this perspective, but if you can find a way to really, as a job seeker, really sell yourself and really show that you're engaged and you're that person for the job, you're that rock star that employer is looking for. I think if you really focus on that, that is what's going to make you stand out from all of the rest of the people.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much to be said for, what energy are you bringing into this process? Mm-hmm. And the more that you're, focused on, what if this doesn't work out? What if they don't hire me? What if I'm unemployed forever? What if, what if, and you're bringing, that's the energy you're bringing into the process, and people pick up on that.
Mm-hmm.
And they may
Yeah.
not know, they may not like it might not be directly aware of it, but on some level, people are picking up on it.
Yeah.
And that's the energy that you're bringing. And so the more that you can focus on believing in yourself, like you said, on trusting that things are going to work out, that you're going to be okay, that, you know, you're doing the best that you can, show up, be excited, be energized, be authentic, be yourself, allow yourself to express and share what you want, why you're there, why they should, you know, believe in you as well, then that's the energy that people pick up on, and it will feel good to them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. All right, so how did you get to where you are now? What did your journey into your current business look like for you?
So I've had my business. It'll be 6 years this November. I launched it in November of 2014. And when I started in human resources all the way back in 2003, I always kind of had this idea that I did want to go out on my own, type of thing, but it was always kind of something I had in the back of my mind. And then, you know, as I moved through my career and I got more experience, I then started a family. So then it kind of got to the point where I put my career a little bit on the back burner so I could spend some time with my kids. And then they got to the age where they were able to go to school, and then I could focus on more of my career. But then I had just, you know, it was that whole adage of it's not the right time to go out on your own. There's not enough money saved in the bank account, and I didn't want to do it as a part-time gig. And then what ended up happening was I had worked for a company for quite some time, and I had a lot of flexibility and was able to work from home and really make my own schedule, which was nice. But then they ended up losing a big client of theirs. So I was laid off, and then I looked for another job, and I found another job. But where I live in the east end of the GTA, I live in Durham region, so just north of Pickering. I ended up getting a corporate recruiter position all the way out in Mississauga. So I had to take the 407. And in the end of it, it wasn't a situation that worked out for me or the company. And I ended up leaving. And I was literally at a crossroads in my career. So I kind of was like, what do I want to do with my career? Do I want to stay in human resources, or do I want to just kind of find any kind of job that's closer to home so I don't have a long commute and I can still see my kids? I knew I wanted to see my kids, but I also knew that I wanted to stay in human resources. I have done my postgraduate, I have my professional designation. I didn't want to leave all of that. I still wanted to do it. I still have a passion for it, but I didn't want that long commute into either downtown Toronto or the west end of the GTA. So then it was kind of, okay, well, if you don't want to commute, but you want to stay in your own field, what are your options? And then that's when it came up as to start your own business. And so that's what I did. And I started looking into, how do you go about doing that? And I was very fortunate at the time. There was a government program through the government of Ontario. Unfortunately, it's not a program that the government runs anymore, but I was able to go through a 6-week, it was almost like a mini MBA training. And I got to figure out, okay, this is what I need from a foundations to launch my business. And I knew I wanted to work with smaller and medium-sized companies because my in-laws have their own small business. So with having a daughter-in-law in HR, they would always ask me, what do you know about this? Can we do this kind of thing? So I knew there was a need there. And it was just a matter of, getting myself out there and getting known within the local marketplace that this is who I was and this is the service that I have. And it's gone really well. And like anything in entrepreneurship, it definitely has its ups and downs, but I think life in general has its ups and downs. Life kind of throws some big curveballs, and I've had some big personal curveballs thrown at me. But throughout all of that, I've been knocked down lots of different times, but I still find a way to kind of keep up and keep going. And all of that I've learned since I've started my business, I never would have had that learning opportunity had I would have stayed in the corporate world. And yes, there are days when I sometimes say to myself, oh, maybe I should just go back and work for someone else. And then it's like, nope, no, I enjoy this too much to go back to that. So, and it's like you said, just constantly believing in yourself and putting that out there. I'm a huge believer in what you put out into the universe will definitely come back at you. So if you constantly put out, negative energy and negative thoughts, then that's really is what will come back to you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And you know what? I think it's a question that crosses every entrepreneur's mind of maybe I should just go back. Maybe I should just, get the 9 to 5, get a job, just, I don't have to figure it all out for myself. It'd be nice to have that steady paycheck every 2 weeks. I don't have to worry about it. And I know for me, and when that comes up, it's like, yeah, that sounds really good for about 30 seconds. And then
yeah, exactly. And then you're like,
right.
but what would you be kind of giving up in a way if you decided to kind of get that job again? And it's like, and there's a trade-off, right? Like you're going to have to trade something off to get something else. So, and I'm not willing to make that trade.
Exactly.
So yeah. And I love what I do. And I definitely, I wouldn't go back. And I think the only thing I wish I would have started it sooner, but hindsight's 2020. So I think I started it at the time that I needed to.
Yeah, exactly. It all comes around sort of at the right time, right? So we can look back and say, oh yeah, I wish, but everything happened in the moment it was meant to happen in. And, factoring in, I started my business when I had a 10-month-old, and then 3 months later got pregnant with our second. So a year into my business, I had a newborn and a 22-month-old. And it was just like, this is crazy town.
Yeah.
But when I look back at it all, it's like that happened the way it happened for a reason. And there were so many learnings along the way, and not necessarily comfortable learnings.
Yeah.
A lot of it was the hard way. But it got me to where I am. So it all happens for us. And I think, especially in this time right now, when we look at people who are so affected by what's going on in the world, a lot of stress, a lot of mental health challenges, it's, taking a look around at what is the reality right now? What is the situation that I am in? And how is this happening for me?
Mm-hmm.
What am I meant to get from this?
Yeah.
Because we've all got similar things going on, but our perceptions of it are very different.
Yeah, exactly. And I think a lot of people have used a lot of this time to figure out, what's important to them. So what's important to them as it relates to their job and their career or their business if they're entrepreneurs. And then what's important to them from a personal standpoint, from a family standpoint. Because I think, one of the things we had in the beginning when the kids were at home, because I run my business out of my home office. So I've been working remotely for years. So working remotely is not a new thing. But for me, when I had my kids at home while they were trying to homeschool and I was trying to help them homeschool, it was something that was completely new to me. But at the same time, I still had this extra time that I had with my kids. My husband with his family business, there was a portion of the business that hadn't been opened yet because of the lockdown. So the four of us got to spend much more time together, especially in the spring. He's the golf course superintendent. So come the springtime, he's super busy, but he had all of this time. So we got to spend time together. And so it made me think, okay, what's important for me? What do I need in order to help other people? And a lot of it too is making sure that you do what's important for you as well. Make sure that you take care of yourself, because if you have to take care of other people, whatever that looks like for you, If you don't take care of yourself, then you're not really any good to those other people that rely on your support. And I learned that from quite a few years ago. 9 years ago, we ended up losing our second child shortly after he was born.
Oh,
And so all of kind of these last 9 years have been really this self-transformation and realizing that in spite of all of the loss and tragedy that we went through, we still have an amazing life. I have my own business. I still have two wonderful children. I'm still married to my husband. So those are the things that are important for me, and they rely on my support just like my clients do. And if I don't take care of myself, especially from a mental standpoint, then I'm not going to be able to support them in the way that they need that support. Right. So I think a lot of what's come out from this pandemic is a lot of people have figured out, okay, what is important for me? And it is good to kind of sit down and reflect and think, like, what do I want out of this? Because we're now so much more aware than we were before that life has its uncertainties, and there are things that we don't have control over. But the things that we do have control over, let's look at those and work with that.
right. Yeah, absolutely. I think you've got such a great perspective on that. And it comes back to that analogy of, you're on the airplane, you put your own mask on before the child beside you, filling up your own cup before anybody else's. Like, if your cup is empty, you have nothing to give anyone else. And so for me, that's such an important topic, but it's also one that is very different to talk about than it is to implement into your life. Like, I've started a routine where my morning is about me before anybody else comes into my space. Like, I'm up before the kids and I'm filling up my cup and I'm doing what makes me feel good for me. It's not for anybody else. It has to be fully for me before anybody else needs me. And then I get the kids off to school, and then I do the same thing again before clients need me. And I'm back to, how full is my cup right now? And just how good do I feel? Because that is the energy we're bringing into our families. That's the energy we're bringing into our work, to our colleagues, to our clients, to our friendships, in all areas of our life. It's like, I do me first. I fill up me first, and I get myself into the energy that I want to bring other people. And then that is like, there's so much magic that can happen from that place, because it's infectious, it's contagious. People go, oh, you are great to be around. You feel good to me. And they may know it, they might be aware of it, or they might just like you and not really know why, but people want to be around you when you're in that good energy.
Yeah.
And I think it's also important to note too, like you talked about, you've gone through personal struggles, you've gone through loss and tragedy. And so taking care of yourself and being in good energy doesn't mean let's avoid all of that. Let's pretend that doesn't exist and put a smile on and be happy, because that sort of bypassing is really, really dangerous too. So it's like being able to hold space for both. I can honor where I'm at. I can honor my emotions. I can honor, the journey that I'm on, and I can be in gratitude for everything that I do have.
Yeah. And that's where very early on, like shortly, so we had lost our second child shortly after he was born. We knew there were issues. We just didn't know how bad the issues were. And then 1 month after giving birth to my second, I got pregnant with our third. And it wasn't planned to happen that way. That's how it happened. So for me, I delayed my grieving and working through all of that. And I really got into a place where I thought I could handle all of that on my own, that I could be the one to figure this out, just me. And what I realized over all these years is that you can't do it all on your own. And it's okay to ask for help. It doesn't make you a weaker person if you say, hey, I need your help with this. Because we're just not able to do it all on our own, and that's okay. And so asking for help is, in my opinion, much more stronger, and you can do things much more better just by asking for help. And so I was very much in that that place before where I was like, no, I can do this myself. I'm a mom, I'm a career professional. I should be able to handle this. And it's like, no, and it's okay that I wasn't able to handle it. And it took me a while to kind of get to that place. But then once I realized that and I let that go, then the transformation and that started to happen. And I started really to focus on not so much what I didn't have, but what I still had despite everything.
Yeah.
And I really started to change kind of that energy too, where it was a lot of kind of negative energy, and then switch it over into the positive energy. And then once that shift started to happen, it was, things started to kind of just start rolling on much more easier than it was before.
Yeah. Brilliant. I love that. I think, there's so much value in what you're saying there that applies to life in a bigger picture as well, because no, you can't do it alone, but we're not meant to do it alone. No. We are a village. Like, we're meant to have a village. And, when you think of it takes a village to raise a child, it also takes a village to continue raising an adult.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Not just for children, it's for all of us. We're meant to be in community and support of each other. And feeling like, when we look at fundamental human needs, that sense of belonging, that sense of community is part of that.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time, and I think I see this in both men and women, but just differently, we put on this armor, like, I'm supposed to be able to handle it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I'm supposed to be able to be mom and be working and be keeping the house in order and make sure the kids are well behaved and look, put together, and put a smile on for my husband when he gets home from work, and mm-hmm. also do all of my work things and be there and it's just like, at what point did you put all these expectations on yourself?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And where did they come from? Because we were not born with these expectations. They are conditioned.
Yeah.
And then same thing for men, but just, in a different way. I'm supposed to be the provider. I'm supposed mm-hmm. to, making money and earning and taking care of everybody. And if my family doesn't have what we need, then there's something wrong with me. And it's so much pressure. And I think of, when I look at your story, how it applies into so many other areas of life too, like the learnings and how to take care of yourself that came out of that will serve you for a lifetime as we're going through so much change and uncertainty now, and whatever is going to come in the future.
Yeah. Because even kind of at the beginning, when the lockdown first started, pretty much around March break in Ontario, I was on, I don't know, at least 2 webinars a day, constantly looking at the press conferences that the government to make sure I was up to date with all of the information for my clients and things like that. And I got to the point, it probably happened, I think it was around May or so. And one of the learnings that I've had through this journey that I've been on is, and I see myself when I get into these, I call them like funks, where I'm like, I'm down and out. I have no motivation to do anything. And if I could stay in bed all day. And I'm now starting to realize those more. And I realized when I reflected back and looked back and figured, okay, well, this is where I was spending all of my time. It was either making sure my kids were homeschooled properly, and then making sure I was up to date, and trying to balance, what I would do in a work day, one full day, and try to squeeze it into half a day and think that I could still do it all in that time. And I did kind of get to the point of burnout. And so I took a day off. I didn't answer any emails. I let my clients know I'm not available today. And I just spent the day with my kids, and we just played whatever they wanted to do. And as I got into that, I could feel myself starting to kind of come out of that fog. But it is so important to realize that in yourself, and to make time for yourself, and realize, what, I do need to slow down, because, it's, life is there to enjoy and, sit back and smell the roses. It's okay to do that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Taking care of yourself is so important. Mm-hmm. I love that. And this is so relevant too, to what I'm seeing being so important for other people to remember, regardless of what's going on in their life right now. Some people are obviously affected by the state of our world more than others. Some people have lost their jobs. Some people's work has taken off. And with how different family members are affected. So there's so much going on, but it's such an important message for people to turn off the outside world sometimes and just recenter.
Yep.
Because I know when I've got the radio on or the news on, all of a sudden it's controlling my energy. Mm-hmm. Right. So that press conference or that news update or this article or this reporter or whatever, it's like that is now in control of me instead of me being in control of me. And I often find I have to turn that stuff off and really just come back to what feels good for me. Yep. What feels right for me. What do I need? And how do I show up and serve in a way that is good for me and helps other people?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Yeah, and I find myself more so now than I think this time last year, where I'm a lot more consciously aware of no, I need to kind of turn that off. Don't look at that social media or look at those updates. Just literally kind of disconnect in a way, and then just be in kind of my own little world. And sometimes I do that through, I'll put my favorite playlist on and I'll just, dance around the house all by myself. Or I go out where I live, there's tons of mountain biking trails. I'm a big mountain biker. So I'll just get on my bike and then just go for a ride, and use that as my release. I think if you you need to kind of find what are those things that you like to do for yourself that can make you kind of disconnect from that connected world that we're all in right now. And I think for quite a few people, part of this pandemic, they've kind of realized that now, and they've figured out different ways of doing it. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, my hope and my goal for people is that they keep doing it, that they've kind of turned it into not just a temporary thing, it's a permanent thing. That's part of their new normal.
Exactly. I think the biggest tragedy would be not learning from this time that we're in.
Yeah.
From just, falling back into, when it's all behind us, falling back into life the way we used to know it and not learning from it. Because there's, among the tragedy and among, the hard things that have happened, there's also so much good.
Yeah.
And we've seen, I remember in the spring, people talking about, I live about 45 minutes north of Toronto, and getting onto the highway heading into the city, and you could see things that you never used to be able to see because the sky was clearer, pollution was down. You could see the CN Tower long before you used to be able to see it. So it's there's a win. Mm-hmm. People are spending more time with their families because, as long as you could see them and you're in the same house, everybody's home now. And things took a slower pace. I know for me, in our family, we've been asking for things to slow down. We were in the rhythm last year of just school and extracurricular activities and my business and my husband's work and hobbies and visiting family and wanting to do all these activities. And life was just go, go, go. And we created it that way. But then we also wanted to just be able to slow down and just relax a little more. And we got to do that. And we've continued to get to do that. And I think the greatest tragedy would be to take all these things that we've learned and everything we've gained and just put it all beside us and go back to the way before.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Because we all, part of life is making mistakes, and that's fine. And I always am hesitant to use the word mistake too. It's more of, it's a learning opportunity. So something didn't go your way that you thought it would, that's fine. But what are you going to learn from it? What are you going to do differently so that next time it doesn't happen? Yeah. And I tell my kids that all of the time. It's okay, yeah, you this is what happened. What are you going to learn from it? What are you going to do differently next time? Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, when history does repeat itself, it's because nobody did learn from from what happened. And I agree with you. I do hope that people do take a lot of their learnings from this so they can go, okay, this is what I've learned. This is what I don't want going forward.
Right.
And this is what I need to do in order for that not to happen again.
Yeah. Yeah. Here's what we don't want, and here's what we do want more of. And let's maintain that, and let's keep that growing.
Yeah, exactly.
Brilliant. I love it. And I think, this is where we come back into the conversation around communication and culture within organizations. When that's the culture that you're building, is one where, yes, you're going to make mistakes, and we don't want to make mistakes, but it's going to happen, and we can be okay with that. And it's so much easier to be okay with making mistakes when you know that you're going to learn from it and you're going to maintain that learning moving forward.
Yep.
Everybody will be better off in the end.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the culture. And people feel like, I can make mistakes. I can come to you. I can be honest. I can talk to you about it. I can be met with compassion and understanding and go, okay, here's what we need in order to move forward. And here's what we've learned. That to me is a beautiful workplace culture that I think a lot of people would appreciate, but we need more of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think, we definitely need more of that. And I think that, like you said, that only comes when there's that true open and honest communication, and communication, it works both ways, right? Like the employers have to listen to their employees, just like the employees have to listen to the employer, right? And it's that active listening. And until you can kind of get that, then you're almost like that hamster on the wheel. You just keep spinning and spinning, and it's like you're going nowhere. So, and that's why whenever my clients come to me, this is the issue. My first question to them is, well, have you talked to your employee about this? And they usually say no. And then I say, okay, well, that's your first step. This is, I coach them on, this is what you're going to say, what you can say, and things like that. But that's their first step. You need to go back and you need to talk to your employee, because until you talk to them and find out exactly what's going on, you don't really truly know what that problem is.
Exactly. Yeah. And there's so much trust in that, right? There's so much trust that is required that I can communicate with you, and you're going to hear me, and you're going to respect what I'm saying, and that I'm going to do the same for you. So I can trust myself to open up. I can trust the other person that they're going to, meet it with compassion, and then the communication can flow from there.
Yeah, exactly. And I know for especially for job seekers, they'll see that companies say that, they have that open door policy, when then in reality, they actually don't. And I think the companies that do that, they do a disservice to themselves and to their employees and their potential employees. But, one of the ways as an employer you can really show that you can walk the walk is if you do truly have that open door policy, and, everybody's approachable. Show that as much as you can in that hiring process. So as you're bringing candidates through from, the initial pre-screening to the one-on-one interviews and things like that, be open and honest, get back to that person right away to say, okay, you know what, we've selected another candidate. And if that person asks for feedback, give them that feedback. And then from a job seeker perspective, if you truly want to work in an organization that has that open door policy and everybody's approachable, ask those questions in the interviews, get that potential employer to give you an idea of what it's like to work there. So that's key too on both sides.
Absolutely. Such great information. And if there's any small business owners out there who want to connect with you and learn more, what's the best way for them to do so?
The best way, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn, or you can contact me through my website, which is www.mkshrconsulting.ca. And then you can fill out the contact us form and I'll be in touch.
Fantastic. All right. Well, thank you so much, Sara. This has been such a wonderful conversation.
Thank you.
I've been really happy to have you, and I'm excited for our listeners to be able to hear this message from you as well.
That's awesome. Thank you very much, Shellie, for having me. I appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. You've been listening to CareerBuzz, Canada's unique radio conversation that empowers lives, enriches careers, and energizes organizations. On CIUT 89.5 FM, I'm your host, Shellie Deloyer, founder of Bright Futures Solutions. You can find out more about me online at brightfutures.solutions. Thanks to my guest today, Sara Bibb. For more information, her website is mkshrconsulting.ca. An MP3 of this show is available from CIUT.fm, and you can catch CareerBuzz every Wednesday at 11 a.m. on CIUT. I'm Shellie Deloyer. Thanks for listening to CareerBuzz.